Got it. Okay. And for the first part of this conversation, you will be able to submit questions through chat directly to us. And to do so, please direct them to Avia, who will monitor it. And later in the meeting, we will open the chat to everyone. But we didn't want to be distracted by chats popping up in the beginning, so we could all be present together. We are really happy that so many of you are joining us to talk about the work of cultural equity that many of us are engaged and engaging in and hope to be engaging in on all levels. And we have a few of us from representing CDSS here, and we also have quite a number of other board members, past board members, and I'm sure future board members out there as well. So I am Margaret Barry. I am on the CDSS board and part of the Cultural Equity Task Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Avia Moore. I'm a member of the CDSS board, your Canadian board member, and I'm a member of the Cultural Equity Task Group. And I am also currently convening the Strategic Planning Task Group. So I'm wearing both of those hats tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie German. I'm the Executive Director of CDSS, and that's the only hat I'm wearing today.
And my name is Gay Pfeiffer. I am currently the president of the board of CDSS. I'm also serving on the Cultural Equity Task Group. And I get to start tonight by summarizing our communications with you so far in terms of cultural equity. So I'd like to start by reading the definition that comes from the Americans for the Arts, which is an arts advocacy organization that we are associated with and that we pay attention to. So here's the definition. Cultural equity embodies the values, policies, and practices that ensure that all people, including but not limited to those who have been historically underrepresented, based on race, ethnicity, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, socioeconomic status, geography, citizenship status, or religion, are represented in the development of arts policy, the support of artists, the nurturing of accessible, thriving venues for expression, and the fair distribution of programmatic, financial, and informational resources. So that's the definition we're using. It's a mouthful, and we'll take it apart some. We have been talking about all kinds of different aspects of cultural equity. And I want to just summarize where we are right now. First of all, this is not a finished story. So we are spending lots of time with introspection, deep listening to each other and to other people, and continuing work. So we expect this to be an ongoing process that's involving everything we do as an organization, that will be looking at everything through this cultural equity lens. And we're trying to make space for new ideas and new understandings as we embrace the traditions of dance, music, and song that we love. So here are some things that are happening right now. We are working on crafting a mission statement that reflects more accurately who we are and what we do. We are working to support local communities to do cultural equity work in their communities. We're making sure as much as possible that we tell the whole story of our history as an organization and the history of our traditions. We are providing guidance in programming and resources to correct any harmful narratives and to give appropriate historical context. And we are recognizing and representing diversity in programming and in hiring, and that includes board service. So these are all places that we're working at the moment. And I think that's my part of what we're going to say now.
So we invited all of you to submit questions in advance, and we received a few. And so we will start with those questions, and then we will open it up to more questions that you have, that you think of as we're talking, and those can all be submitted through the chat directly to Avia. And we'll start with the question, how does the CDSS Cultural Equity Program work? And by this, there isn't a specific program, so just how are we took this to mean, how are we going about working on cultural equity? And Katie will tackle this question.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I think what you just said is a really good place to start, which is we aren't thinking about cultural equity work as a plug-in program, something that's separate and distinct that we bring in and we work on, kind of as we allocate time, the way we do other programs. We are trying to think of, we want to integrate it into all of what we do and how we operate. So what that means is when we go through our normal operations and we plan for camps, when we plan for programs, when we practice or get ready to hire a new person, when we plan ahead for the bookstore, that every conversation that we have about how we operate and what we do, we're bringing in a cultural equity lens. And another word we use a lot is access, and talk about removing barriers of access to what we have, what we do, and what we offer. So it's a little bit, that's kind of a subtle difference in how you talk about it, but I think it's a really important fundamental difference. And it means that we're trying to change our habits and our behaviors in a way that goes beyond designing a program that lives kind of in a distinct bubble and gets attention when there's time and effort for it. So that being said, I think I gave a few examples, but basically when we do a lot of planning and we do a lot of thinking ahead this time of year for the next year. So some examples of how we're bringing cultural equity, a cultural equity lens and conversation into what we do. When we create our annual plan, when we make our budget, we are talking about, we're making sure that we're asking ourselves, are we paying attention to the things that that we need to be paying attention to? So sorry, it's late. I'm not as articulate as I am first thing in the morning. A great example is when we're planning ahead for camp hiring. So we're thinking about, okay, we hire program directors, we're giving them guidance and support as they bring in staff for the summers. We also are starting to have more conversations with them, actively encouraging looking outside of our normal sphere of people that we hire, reaching out to people who that would be great leaders or teachers that represent more diversity. So that's racial diversity, but also ability, age. There's all sorts of ways that diversity needs to be reviewed and considered when we make these choices. And so for camps, that's a balancing act, right? You want enough people who kind of know how to keep the good stuff going, but you want to also create an environment where new staff and new people can come in and feel that they have agency, that they have access and ownership of the space and the things that we do. So that's kind of how it manifests in camp. We're also thinking a lot about how we're using our online programming. So we have, now that we use online format for some of our workshops and learning opportunities, we want to try to say, okay, well, how do we expand what we're offering to people? Bring in new voices, and also making sure that when we present contra dance or English country dance or the music that goes with it or singing traditions, that we're taking the time and effort to contextualize that in the broader, story of social change and social reality during the times where these traditions came from. And that's a lot. And everybody, we are definitely not the only organization figuring out how to do that. So another big theme of what we do is trying to create connections so that everybody can learn from what each other, what we're all doing together. So trying to seek out and find folks that are trying different approaches to things, that are opening the conversation and bringing more voices to the table. So that's, all of that is brought in when we're planning and trying to figure things out. We also are planning to do a pretty comprehensive review of the materials in our bookstore to make sure that that what we present is properly researched and gives a good full story and isn't accidentally insulting anybody. And we haven't done that, and it's time we do it. So those are just a few examples of how cultural equity work is coming in and being integrated. We've also had some great conversations. We've hired a few new people this year. And in the process of hiring, we've talked about what are the practices and things that we have that are so ingrained in how we hire people that we need to re-examine and make sure that those aren't barriers to more diverse and new people coming into our staff. We still, there's not a quick fix to any of it, but it's really important, I think, that we're talking about access, diversity, and inclusion in everything that we do now. So that was a very rambly response.
That was great, Katie. Thank you so much. I noticed a few people have joined us, so I welcome. And what Katie was responding to was one of the questions that came in our Google form about how does CDSS cultural equity work, what it looks like, and what progress has been made. And if you have, so we're going to continue to respond to some of these questions, and then we will be open to new questions that you can submit to through the chat at any time. So the next question we will respond to is, how will this work affect members and affiliates of CDSS? Avia, do you want to respond to that one?
Sure. And I will say that one of the questions that has already come in, I'm going to pull into this section because it already relates. And that is, though it doesn't fully answer it, but I think it'll start to answer it, which is to what degree is the mission of the current effort limited to the products, services, and conduct of business and messaging of CDSS, so internally, as opposed to the dance and song world served by CDSS as a whole. So I think these are related questions. And I'll at least start to answer that, and we can come back to it as well. So in talking about our cultural equity work, we're very much talking about things that we are hoping to put into place. Our hope is that we, by making time and space for harder conversations ourselves, we hope that others will be inspired to do this as well. But this is it's very much a two-way hope, right? There are groups in the community that we've been inspired by the cultural equity work that they've been doing. And then we'd like to be able to serve as a model as well. The cultural equity report, the advisory group report, was very much internally facing. So we asked them to look at CDSS as an organization rather than as an ecosystem. But we do think, as Katie used the word ripple, I believe, and we really think that this work ripples throughout the community, right? So for instance, we've already established granting programs for communities who are looking to do cultural equity work and need support for getting started or for engaging with that work. We don't have requirements for our affiliates and our members that are related to cultural equity. And you may, for those of you who dug into the report, the advisory group report itself, you may have seen recommendations that related to affiliates vis-a-vis values and guidance. And it prompted us to ask, it very explicitly prompted us to recognize that not regulating affiliates is a choice that we're making. By not doing something, we're also making a choice to not do that, right? Even if we haven't thought about it as a choice in the past, inaction is also a choice. So we've been thinking hard about that, and hard about where we, what leadership means to us in terms of cultural equity in the community. And we're not saying, this is something that we're still deeply in discussion about and not all agreed on, right? And I think that's a really good example of how pulling an issue apart on a board and a staff is not always an easy thing. We spend a long time talking about this internally, and it's been really good for us because we have incredibly deep conversations about what it means to be in a leadership position, what it means to hold resources, what it means to hold traditions. And but we do hope that we can develop best practices that help guide our affiliates as they engage with this work, which is not the same thing as regulation, right? But it's about providing sort of a way forward for those who are interested in engaging and being very transparent about what our values are, and engaging with all of you and all of our members and all of our affiliates in these hard conversations, sort of modeling that. So that's a start to that question, and I think we can come back to it later on.
Thank you, Avia. Next question is, what will CDSS do to bring more young people and more BIPOC people into our dance scene? Gay.
I think the first thing I want to reiterate is that we don't have all the answers and that we're in this discussion and learning with our affiliates. So we are always open to hearing if there are things that are working in your community, share them with us, and we can share them with the rest of the affiliates. So we are really looking to be a network in that way. And I will say that demographic goals and quotas are not really what we're working towards. We are working more towards finding out what makes people feel isolated or othered or unwelcome. What are the barriers to access? And then sharing what we've learned and what resources we have to try to open communities. So if we don't think about those things first, it can be very uncomfortable for people to try to join our communities. So we're trying really to help. We're doing this ourselves and the staff and the board, but also to help in our own local communities to help create a space where people will feel comfortable. And we will learn about what works and what doesn't work and share that with each other.
So as a follow-up, Gay, what tools can be provided to local groups so that they can start taking on this work in baby steps? Maybe groups aren't ready to hire a consultant just yet, but ideas for slowly moving the needle forward would be great.
Great. I think it is very true that all our communities are at different places. And so we don't have a one size fits all plan for everybody doing the same thing. I do know that one thing that we've been doing is regionally meeting with leaders of affiliates and talking about these issues. We have an ambassadors program that's working in a few regions now. And so we've been meeting with those leaders in our region and talking about cultural equity. We have also done some cultural equity workshops for the leaders of those specific regions, with the hope that if they've done some introductory work on cultural equity, it may be that they see that there's a way to bring it to their local community as well. So I think our modeling, doing the work, and also taking those steps with individual affiliates and groups of affiliates so that they can support each other will make a difference. We are also doing some programming around cultural equity as an organization. So we can educate ourselves, we can educate our members, we can educate our community leaders about what some of the issues are and how we can approach this. Just being more aware of where we are not totally paying attention to what those barriers to access might be. So setting aside time and space to talk as an organization and as leaders of different local organizations. And I think some of our programming will not look like just cultural equity work as a separate entity. It will be built into whatever the topic is. So we could do a workshop on adapting song lyrics so that they're not inappropriate or that they're not harmful. And that is working on a particular issue, but through the lens of cultural equity. So I think more and more we will try to do that in everything we do.
Yeah, that I want to jump in here. It made me think of like what are some small steps to take. I think for us, some of the first steps was bravely looking at where we've messed up, which sounds like, well, duh, of course, that's what an upstanding person would do. But to carve out time and space and energy to have like honest conversations about things that maybe we wish we could have done better or gone back and done differently, that in of itself is a hugely important first step that any group can take at any time. And it's hard. It's really hard to, I would say it's really easy to find other more urgent issues to talk about instead of exploring things that we don't want to recreate in that exact way. But that's, I think in that, just getting in the habit of doing that with your organizing team or with people who are helping hold your community together or your organization together, it gets easier to talk about it over time. It gets easier to bring in voices and listen to voices that challenge what we feel very settled in. And it's a really important piece of all of this. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Thanks, Katie. I guess I want to say too that having open, honest conversation seems to be the first step for all of us, and that we can do that in our own community. We can do it with each other. You can certainly contact us and have those conversations with us, but I think the more we can talk about what's been hard or what is still hard, the better it will be.
Thank you, Gay and Katie, for jumping in there. As you might have noticed, Avia got booted out of our Zoom meeting for a moment and came back. So if you didn't get acknowledgement that she received a question from you, you can send it to her again. But why don't we jump? We received a few so far, and why don't we see if we can address this question? Can you discuss the process for building community consensus on what is meant by a commitment to cultural equity. I'm assuming that's ongoing, not done. So this question, when it does say community consensus, so I assume the question is asking beyond just on the board, but how are we reaching out to the larger community, or how will we do this with the greater CDSS community? Do one of you want to respond to that?
Well, I think Katie should respond, but I do want to say that I think it's a great question because it's a question the board and staff have had to grapple with and are continually grappling with. Again, even the answer to the question itself is not done. That's an ongoing navigation as well. What do we mean by our commitment to cultural equity? It's an ongoing conversation for us as well. So I think it's a great question because community consensus is hard no matter the size of the group.
Yeah, I've been thinking about consensus building a lot, and my strong desire for our group and our larger community to be in consensus, and how that is maybe a little in friction with some of the things that I've been learning from readings that I've been doing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is the strong desire and need to be in consensus can be a barrier to open, honest conversation, because we all desire to heal and fix things and get back to good. And for many of us who've been in these dance and song communities for decades, this was the happy, safe place where we went to get away from the brokenness of everything else. And so to have our community or our sphere feel fractured is really unsettling, and we all want to get quickly, get back to good, get back to consensus. But the process of learning and growing and changing, if you want it to be meaningful, if you want it to be lasting, means that you have to give a little bit of space and allowance to not be in consensus right away. And so to kind of, for lack of a better phrase, lean in and embrace, I don't know, swing, give weight to the problem, and practice so that we get better at recognizing other perspectives and listening and hearing. And it is, I will say, as I have such a strong desire to get to consensus, that I have to check myself on it a lot, because I think there's the danger is that you don't fully examine things that we need to examine, or that the pressure for consensus is also hard for dissenting voices too. You know, if you are in a group of people and everybody agrees that we want to agree, but you don't agree with something that's been said, or you feel like you're in a different position, there's a lot of social pressure right there to be silent. And that can feel isolating, and it can make the divisions feel bigger too. So, I mean, I think.
Kitty, could I jump in and add? So at our annual meeting, we worked with Dr. Dina Jennings as a board and a staff. And Dr. Jennings was the facilitator of the advisory group who prepared the report for us. And Dina asked us whether we talked a lot about dialogue, and she asked us to think hard about whether we were agreeing for the sake of getting along, of consensus. Were we agreeing to create a consensus, or were we actually trying to understand each other? Because there can be sort of a skip over understanding as we seek to agree. And I thought that was a really powerful reminder that we don't always have to agree, but we should be seeking to understand each other even when we don't agree. And that that is actually a more important space to seek out than the space of agreement.
Thank you. I would like to move on to another question that came in, and I think these two questions are related. They were worded somewhat differently. How will CDSS create likelihood that the underrepresented, unacknowledged, will come to see people like themselves in CDSS programming, in camps, in workshops, in online content? So that question is, how will we help to facilitate that? And related to that is this question: how do you address the fact that most of the people involved in CDSS are not in the othered, in quotes, category that we need to include in our community programming and staff? People who don't experience exclusion often miss many of the ways in which people are excluded. So I'd say the first question is about how we're going to create, move forward with bringing more underrepresented into the community, and how do we understand that if we aren't ourselves experiencing exclusion?
Those are great questions. One thing that I know what I want to say to this, but I don't have to be only answering. I don't think we've done a good enough job of representing the diversity that does exist in our community. There are communities that have a lot of people of color on their floor. There are communities that have people with disabilities. They've made accommodations to make sure that everybody can join in. There are, neuroatypical friends among us, and I think we could do a better job of working with people and seeking out and representing the diversity that does already exist. I think that's an important first step, and that's a way of trying to represent something that is without without staging something or tokenizing people. I mean, that's the risk, right? If you don't want the one person of color to come into your dance to have all cameras pointed on them the whole night. That's really uncomfortable. So we have to balance, make sure we're not tokenizing people, but also if we do a better job collectively of representing what does exist, I think that will help start to help more people see themselves possibly doing these activities that we do. It is true, we're a very, very white community, and it doesn't mean that we're bad. I think it just means that we need help seeing what are the barriers, what are the reasons that people don't want to join or come into this space. And so I think that's the first thing that pops into my mind on this one. Others, you want to join in?
Well, maybe it's useful to say that, a very small example of something we're talking and working about on the board is about defraying travel costs associated with attending board meetings, so that we make sure that someone's financial situation or economic situation is not a barrier to participating on the board and contributing in that way. And that may seem like a very small step, but it can be a huge step in terms of removing barriers for access and thus participation, and thus leadership, of course. We've also come to recognize in our conversations that a huge barrier to participation is time and energy. So, we are looking at other ways. Many of you probably know, our board has committees that have community members on it. So we're looking at how we can bring people onto those committees that maybe it's a less of a time commitment than full board service. So we're looking at ways that we can address the question through small things like that. In addition,
I'd also like to add that in terms of this question about if you not experiencing exclusion, and can miss ways. I think that it's really important when people do speak up and speak to leaders, and that's true in every community, as well as in the larger organization, when people write or take somebody aside to speak, that you really listen to what someone's saying, what their experience is, because they might be having an experience that you have, that you don't know at all, and that's true in so many ways. That's true in terms of gender, as well as in terms of race, ethnicity, and it's true in terms of socioeconomic factors, like Avia was mentioning. Why don't we jump on to this next question, which I think is.
Can I just say one thing? Katie, would you like to just talk about a couple of the pilots that we have in camp for this next summer that will remove some barriers to access?
Yeah, Joanna and the programs team are going to pilot some different models. So we're going to do a sliding scale model. Oh goodness, I think I know what week it is, but I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong week. So I think I'm not going to say it right off the bat unless, unless someone messages me. But for one of our weeks, we're piloting a sliding scale model, which means that instead of having a set fee for everybody, there's a fee range that that people can apply within. In addition to that, we have scholarships, and we're reviewing and restructuring our scholarship program to really differentiate between work exchange scholarships and not work exchange scholarships. There are many reasons why people who apply for scholarships may or may not be able to take on extra labor when they're at camp, and that's a distinction we haven't really been. It's a nuance we haven't been able to accommodate well or figure out, and we're trying to do that in a better way, so that there's a distinction and there's a difference. And so we have multiple ways of driving that fee for attendance down, and so if we structuralize it, make it a structure for it, that's something, and it works well, we can implement it in other weeks. And that's something that we've been talking about for many years, and it's really exciting to finally be doing it. So yeah, someone is telling me they think they know the week too. I just, that fear when you just know you're going to say the wrong week.
Well, it will be revealed soon. So another question is a very challenging one, I think, for all of us. Now, how is it possible to make space for this work when there are so many other pressures for group survival, COVID, attendance, retirement, burnout, etc., and for CDSS too, when this takes so much work and effort, I would say time, right? What things aren't happening that we would be doing? What is getting deprioritized? And I mean, we can address that a little, but I think that's like an existential question for all of us. And I do think that key that Gay mentioned at the very beginning, it's a lens through everything we're doing. And so the more that can be happening, and it's not an add-on and it's not something additional, is a key.
Yeah.
I see John. Yeah. Katie, did you want to respond? I also see John has his hands up.
Yeah, well, actually, John, did you want to say something related to that exact question? If you want to, you can.
John is a longtime member of the group.
Yes, just to introduce myself, I'm in Sacramento, California. I just left 2 terms at the CDSS board, and obviously I'm Asian, and I believe I'm the first person of color in the CDSS board. I'm still at the advisory committee, which is obviously a topic I care a lot about. And part of what I want to do is continue to be a contributing member, but direct my contributions, and others are certainly welcome to join me, towards this, as I said, integrated approach on our programming. I think part of it is outreaching. We all have friends of color. And especially I feel, immigrant groups or foreign students and that type, it's a great way to introduce them, but I like to contribute towards a fund that will encourage musicians of color to, cross genre. There's a lot of classical people that probably are looking for work. I mean, just to enrich, if we have representation physically, and California is a little bit ahead because we have a lot of, Asians particularly here. But I just wanted to encourage people to think about, not to say we're going to attack this as a separate program while we have all these other things going on. While we're trying to get back into the swing of things, just allow this cultural lens to sort of come through. And that's all I want to say on that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's very similar to what I was going to say, John. Thank you. I'm so glad you did. From my perspective, okay, I know what you're saying. And there are days when I feel like, oh my gosh, everything is so heavy. Everything is so heavy. The economic impact of on organizations right now in of itself could take up all of our time and energy just thinking about how to problem solve that, support people and stuff. I know there's a lot of leadership burnout. I know there's a lot of other things that are happening right now. How could we possibly add one more thing? I actually think there's no better time, and not just because I'm trying to make myself believe it, but we are in a situation, I think, as a larger community where we're not returning. We're not going to return to what was before the pandemic for many reasons. We're in a rebuilding phase. We're in a regrowing phase. That's different work. That's different work. And it is the absolute perfect time to think about everything in new ways. So, if we want more diverse young people on the dance floor. Leaders are burning out. We have a problem with that. Well, those two things are not separate, distinct problems that you have to choose your energy for. We need to think about, how do we bring more people in, all people who are from different walks of life. How do we get them to fall in love with this like we fell in love with it, and be willing to step into leadership positions? Because that's who's willing to step in leadership positions, the people who are passionate, excited, energized by what we do. So there's not I don't see it actually as an either or. I see it as a bigger, more important thing. I mean, almost everything that we do in the name of equity or inclusion, or have done at CDSS, I think it's better for the whole organization, for everybody. It's not giving up. Well, that's okay. I'm going to take us down a road we don't want to go into, so I'm going to stop that. But I guess my point is, when we're talking about growing something from scratch and rebuilding and putting things together in new ways, that is the perfect time to think about, how did we do it before? How are those practices maybe barriers that we didn't recognize? And how do we just build the new thing in a slightly different way that addresses some of those barriers? And I think it's really, I really hope people can see the potential in doing this work right now, while we're rebuilding. Because if we put it off, if we say, okay, first we're going to try to get back to what we were, and then we'll deal with some of these problems, we might not be able to get back to where we were because of the many, many factors that we're all dealing with: rising costs, aging population, leadership burnout. We actually can't really afford to ignore the cultural equity stuff, because we need the new people, the new energy, the new passion, the new ideas. So this is the best time. That's my thought.
Thank you, Katie and Gay, and then we're going to go on to hear a little more from our community.
I just want to add to that I don't think that we can all just wait for CDSS to figure this out either. That one of the things we can do as an organization is help people network. So if communities are figuring out things that work and they have successes, we can help share those. So I don't want us to leave anybody with the impression that you can just wait until we have it all figured out. That's not going to happen either.
You don't get to sit this dance out. Everybody's in.
Thank you. Katie, I don't know if you got a message from Avia, but she got bounced out and is back again. So if you can co-host her.
I see that. I'll do that now.
Or in fact, host her if you'd like her to open up the chat at this point, because we wanted to change the chat so everybody can post easily. And this is we want to take a few minutes, and it's getting rather late, to hear from the community. First, about what are you excited about seeing CDSS move forward on in terms of cultural equity? And we would just love to have lots of people write in little sentence or more that we can all see, and we'll read a few of them back. But we want to hear from you about what are you excited about? What would you like to see us move forward on?
And I just made the chat open to everyone, so you should be able to type in the chat now. I will say, I know we didn't get to all of the questions that were submitted because we wanted to give a chance for this as well. But I've captured everything that was sent to me so that it will all go back to board and staff. So thank you. And because they're great questions. And we know that in a time, such a short time frame, sometimes it stays very broad. So we hope that we've struck a balance between some specifics and some broadness, but there's lots more specifics to get into, and I hope there'll be many more conversations down the road.
I'm not seeing a lot pop in yet. So here's the follow-up question. Maybe this will inspire some more responses. Is there anything you'd like us to add to our list of priorities moving forward?
And I believe that as you're working, we were going to ask Katie and Gay to each share one thing that they're excited about working on.
Yeah.
Well, I think I already mentioned the thing that I'm really excited that we're trying a new program model for camp. It's a baby step, but I think it could, if we do it well, and if it goes well, it could lead to some pretty significant changes. And it's not just about camps, but camps are a major program that there are our major programs, so it will have a significant impact. So I'm excited to be finally taking those steps and seeing how that works.
And just to answer the Chrissy in the chat, that if you'd like to send it privately, you may do that as well. Absolutely. Anything sent directly to me will get copied into our notes. So if you'd like to submit privately, that's totally fine. We are going to save the chat for us internally, and there will be a recording posted for people who weren't able to be here to listen to. Gay?
Oh, there are many things I'm excited about, but I'm very aware. I've been a program director at a camp, a CDSS camp, and so I'm very aware of the challenges with removing barriers so that everybody can come to camp, and or that we have a staff that's happy being at camp and sharing their cultural perspective. So I'm very excited about the possibilities with changing our model so that camp works for everybody.
Ooh, I thought of another thing. So we're about to we're about to launch a brand new website, which we've been working on all year. And the reason we decided to do that was because we wanted to make it easier for people to find what they're looking for. And we are hoping to continue to grow our resource portal. So more and more I see people saying that they want guidance on conversations. They want to hear what people are doing, that what's working well. That's work that I'm really excited about continuing to reach out and try to be a conduit from success stories and learning stories. They don't all have to be successes, but just trying to help be a hub of information. And I'm super excited that our website will be easier to navigate and find things very soon.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Just to randomly read a couple of these, the idea that we could have a workshop for a square dance patter, looking through a cultural equity lens. That would be amazing. Lots of requests for resources, approaches to conversations, how to diversify our dances, excitement about economic approaches, and introductions on the topic for affiliates.
Oh, I saw
optimistically excited about improvements to the website.
I saw a suggestion to me about offering camp space for use of Native Americans. And actually we don't have the camp space, but Pinewoods Dance Camp is doing just that. They've done some really great work reaching out to the local Native American community there, and not just for learning and internal learning, external learning, but I think they're working with them to give access to Pinewoods Camp throughout the year, which is really exciting and cool. So I just want to give they've been a very inspiring partner this year, Pinewoods has.
This is great. Thank you.
We need to, yes, we need to move on, and we are going to save everything you shared with us now. And if more comes to you, and also if you have things you just want to share directly with the board and the staff for our consideration, you can use the Google form we already shared, and we're going to pop that in the chat again. And also, if you need time to get your thoughts together and want to write to us later. So everything you send us, we will be taking time to read and learn from. And Katie had a few more things she wanted to share, and then we're going to end with a song.
Yeah. There's just a few things coming up. Like I already mentioned the website, which is any day now. So keep watching your notifications and emails. The other thing that's happening on the 8th, the evening of the 8th, is Take Hands documentary screening. This is a really heartwarming, great documentary created by Doug Plummer, who the Seattle area was a board member for many years. And it features a community that was part of the CDSS Centennial Tour plan for 2015. And the remarkable work of local organizers and to bring contra dance into a small community. If you just need a reminder about the goodness, the power of contra dance, and just people working together to create joy for each other, it's really great. So we'd love for you to join us on the 8th there. I think we've got some emails out about that. And then the other thing, it's appeal season. We'd love your money too. Our end of year appeal is active right now. And so we're working, we have a lot of ideas and hopes and plans for work at CDSS that continue and expand the work that we do, what we offer as free programming to the larger community. And all of that is just supported by member and donor support. So it's like all organizations, we're facing some financial challenges. The more support we have now and into the coming year, the more we can continue and expand the community programming. So that's the resources, the all the work on the webpage, the podcasts. We have great podcasts if you want to listen to podcasts about contra dance music. So anyway, that's it. Those are my promos. And you can go to cdss.org to find information. And you can go every day for the next week until you see it look different, and then you can play with it and tell us what we need to fix. There you go. Okay. Oh, so I'm leading the song. So we were trying to think of a fun song that is apt or appropriate for this conversation and this work. And the best one I can think of is a Jean Ritchie song. It's a round that many people know. What a goodly thing if the children of the earth could dwell together in peace. And I think, Avia, can you copy those words into the chat? So it's really hard to sing together on Zoom. If you want to sing with me, mute yourself, sing loud, sing bold. Feel free to sing it as a round if you want to. Let's see, are the words there? There we go. What? We're going to try that again. What a goodly thing if the children of the earth could dwell together in peace. Oh, what a goodly thing if the children of the earth could dwell together in peace. One more time. What a goodly thing if the children of the earth could dwell together in peace. Oh, I see some of you doing it as a round. It sounded lovely in my head.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all for coming, giving your time, your energy, your thoughtfulness to this process and showing up here this evening. We look forward to continuing the work to bring greater equity to all that we do and with you. So thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Oh, so many people I didn't even know were on here. Hi.